Welcome back to our Modern Architecture course. My name is John Lobel, and these lectures are on the architect Frank Lloyd Wright. So, we are now going to look at Wright's work in the 1920s. In 1910 to 1920, Wright builds something called Taliesin, and we now call it Taliesin East, because we'll see later he built another one in Arizona. But this is a compound he built for himself, his family, and eventually his apprentices. He had sort of a school. He didn't like the term school, so he called them, his students, apprentices. And it's in the beautiful rolling hills of Spring Green, Wisconsin. And he always tried to make these kind of enclosing interiors with these sloped roofs. But most important during this period, he did a series of concrete buildings, and there are different names for them. They're called concrete block buildings, but they're not really blocks, they're tiles. So they're called concrete tile buildings, but they're also called textile block buildings. First one was the Millard House, nicknamed La Miniatura, in Pasadena, California. And what Wright did, here we see the model of the house, we get a sense of it because it's surrounded by lush vegetation, but it's made up of these blocks or tiles, and in between them he's got these 1/4-inch rebars. So the tiles are about 3 inches thick with these half rounds running around them. So when you put two together, you get a full round, and you can drop a rebar in there and put grout in there. So that made the walls two-way reinforced slabs. And so it's a very strong way of building and made for some very beautiful effects in terms of his ability to make the tiles have patterns in them and have a variety of effects on the surfaces of the house. Now, around the same time, Le Corbusier is doing his work, most prominently the Villa Savoye, and whereas Le Corbusier is building in block, he then stuccos over it, whereas Wright shows us Le Corbusier stuccos over his block, whereas Wright leaves them exposed. So Frank Lloyd Wright and Le Corbusier are the two most prominent, most important architects of the center of the 20th century, and one can debate which one is more important. It's a fun discussion to have. This is another one of these houses, the Ennis residence, and now we'll see a problem. These houses are being built by These houses are being bought by people who appreciate Frank Lloyd Wright, but to qualify to buy one of these, you need many millions of dollars. And in a moment, we'll see why. And this house is very handsome on the inside. You'll have seen it in the detective's apartment in the movie Blade Runner. But when we get to the outside, these poor things are falling apart. Wright had intended, if he did more of these, that these concrete tiles would be prefabricated in a factory, and they'd be very strong and durable, but they were actually cast in wooden molds on the ground, very low quality, and they're falling apart. And all the owners of these houses are spending a lot of money to restore them. So, something for you to think about. How do you feel about the use of exposed concrete for the interior of a home? Just something to think for you to think about. So that was the 1920s. Next, we'll be looking at Wright's work in the 1930s.